Thank you very much. On behalf of yourself and Mr. Was it Galula, who was not present today. And next, we have Mr. Belote, Michael Belote, President of California Advocates, on behalf of the California New Car Dealers Association. You've gotten an earful. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair and members. Mike Belote on behalf of the California New Car Dealers Association. First, no one has mentioned the quality analysis that the staff produced. To take the complexity of this subject and make it intelligible in 6 pages was really quite an accomplishment. Second, as new car dealers, we are independent businesses who are attempting to explain to consumers a subject that is changing by the month. The number of changes that have occurred since Senator Monning introduced his bill are just remarkable, and they are often changing mid-cycle. A car will have a refresh and update on a system, so that we're attempting to constantly keep track of these changes and explain them intelligibly to consumers. We are the face of manufacturers to the consumers. There aren't too many Ms. Corbins who are going to contact the manufacturer and go to that level of detail to figure out what their rights and obligations are. They're typically going to ask us what the car does, what kind of data it has, and to be perfectly honest, consumers are really not asking these questions very often right now. Ms. Corbin, I think, is a example of an exceedingly sophisticated consumer, but that is pretty uncommon. Typically, consumers want to know, how does the Sirius system work? How does OnStar work? You know, what can I plug into to play music? You know, how does my my email appear? And those sorts of convenience features, if you will. A lot of the subjects that I was going to talk about already came up, but the truth is that most, as we understand it as dealers, most vehicle safety information that is going to the cloud, if you will, is non-VIN specific. This is car safety information that is permitting manufacturers to address safety issues in a non-personally identifiable way, and that is how they are getting the information they need to conduct recalls, to change the car, to make it safer to operate. And it seems to me that there are huge policy concerns with allowing consumers to somehow opt out of that. These cars are getting safer, cleaner, more reliable, a better performance every day, and there is no element of the car that is not capable of sending out information, up to and including, I'm told, tires. So the entire car is capable of sending out information so that the product can be made better. And there's a real policy question if you're going to start allowing consumers to disable that, especially if it's not personally identifiable. Now, as to the information that we get, first of all, we are not buying information from manufacturers nor selling it to manufacturers. Most of the information we get, I'm told, to conduct repairs on vehicles is through this famous onboard diagnostic port that came up several times in the first panel. The so-called OBD2 port, mandated by federal law, is where we get the information, and that information is widely available. As Mr. Augustine noted, you can buy an inexpensive product that would allow any of us, I haven't tried it, but I'm told if you do, you get it quickly and you get it intelligibly. It's in English, you understand what is on the OBD2 port, and that's what we use in the main to repair the vehicle. And I would also add that the repair system here in California and in the United States is really a splendid system. We are now taking an increasing number of recalled vehicles, repairing them under warranty. The cost is built into the price of the vehicle, so consumers aren't paying anything for that. We're getting better and better at addressing these problems so the car gets safer and safer. There is an MOU that relates to post-warranty, and consumers not only have a robust choice in their choice of repair facility, but they're exercising it. We are told that roughly 80% of post-warranty repair work is done by independent auto dealers. So we're all competing in this space. So the system as to repair is working very, very well, and I think we ought to think long and hard before we get in the way of a system that is working well. It seems to me that the next step for you, and I don't wish to sound presumptuous at all, but there are going to be questions of bandwidth. You know, you are policymakers with questions on education and healthcare and social services and you name it, the total range of issues facing Californians. There's going to be a bandwidth issue in terms of how minutely, how granularly, if you will, you can get into these things. And we would urge you to take a look at some of the huge issues that Dr. Schladover suggested are coming. You are going to have tens of millions of cars communicating with one another on a minute by or a real-time basis, I guess they say, to operate this transportation network. Imagine the data being transmitted constantly between tens of millions of cars. You've got data going to infrastructure, to those little sensors that the doctor talked about in the roads. You have potentially data going to government in many ways. Think of the liability issues. Think of hacking. Think of the sharing of cars, that there won't be one owner of a car very soon here. People are going to share them. Thinking of the used car issue that came up on the first panel. Think about, we will have decades of non-connected cars driving around in these in this environment of autonomous vehicles. You're going to have enormous public policy questions to work through. We pledge to work with you to make sure that we are communicating to the best information we have to consumers about how their cars work, how the convenience systems work, how you opt in, how you opt out, what you get from your car. We suggest not allowing disabling of all sharing of information, that it could be a real problem, but we also suggest that over time you're going to need to talk about the big questions. For example, and this is not the subject of your debate, of your hearing today, but what does this mean for issues of public transit and road maintenance? There's enormous questions that you're going to have to deal with as all cars begin talking to one another. We pledge to keep consumers aware of what their information, what their cars are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think we all agree that there are some massive issues. Today, the focus is on privacy. How much information does a company or does a manufacturer or someone who can accumulate that information, how much information should they have available for purposes other than, as you mentioned, the safety and security of cars? What should they be able to accumulate and aggregate, and should they be able to provide that information, whether they sell it or exchange it for some other consideration? I think that is the focus, at least my concern here. And then the safety issue, of course. And part of this is we are learning. We are just, I think, just scraping the surface. When you go out and buy a car today, who in the world knows that there are all these other aspects to it? Some people do, but I think a lot of us don't, and that's part of why we're here. So I thank you very much for your information today. Next, Mr. Montalbano. Did I get it right this time?
Pretty good.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
My name is Dennis Montalbano. I've been in the industry for over 45 years. I'm the owner of German Auto Repair in Fresno. I've been there for 27 years. And I'd like to thank the committee for inviting the Automotive Service Councils of California to this meeting. I am the current president, and I have some concerns that I would like to address. And when we talk about the aftermarket people, you're talking about the repair industry. And as Mr. Belote said, that we do about 80% of the repairs of the cars in California. So we're the guys that fix the cars. And they leave the dealer, they come to the independent garages, and that's where we have to have access also. Now, the ironic thing about what we're talking about today with the OBD2 plug being on a car since 1996, the actual Automotive Service Councils of California got that plug put into the cars, and it was under a lot of work to get that done because it was a federally universal plug. All manufacturers had their own plugs up until then, and we got that plug put in, and we had no idea that we'd be looking at telematics this many years later. But the real time that we're talking about here, we need to differentiate what we're talking about as the OBD2 plug. This gentleman said that we have access to that OBD2 plug, and with a small scanner, we can go read that. But the difference is we have to have the car in our facility to do that. But with telematics being broadcasting car information, that data will be sent out without the car being in your possession. So we're looking at a little different twist on how the OBD2 plug now works. So yes, the consumer has a right and he has the ability to buy a scanner and plug into the OBD2 plug, but he doesn't know what's being broadcast while he's going down the road. And as far as bandwidth, we all are using cell phones when we're driving down the road illegally, right? So we already have just a plethora of information that's in the atmosphere. So what I'm really here to talk about today is giving the consumer the choice and having him have the ability to choose where he wants to have his car repaired. And marketing is going to be a problem, and we want to make sure that we're included. So if the manufacturer is steering cars to their dealerships, rightfully, because they're in business and they want the customers, but if we're working on 80% of the vehicles, wouldn't it be logical to be able to let those people choose where they want to have their cars fixed? It's their right too. The other thing that I wanted to bring up real briefly is I rented a car here a couple weeks ago, and I got in the car and it picked up my phone, but all the person's contact information from the previous rental was in that device. I saw his contact list, who he called, and I don't think the person that was in that car before me had any idea at all that that was available to him to clear that out of there. So we have to be cognizant, but I think the consumer's rights have to be looked at, their privacy. Thank you.
Very much. Mr. Rice, you're up.
Hi, good afternoon. Couple quick things. First off, I was under the impression that the committee liked to see bright shirts, so I figured I should wear a bright shirt today, so I wanted to do that.
I don't want to discourage the fellows when they come from dressing up appropriately, but ties can be boring.
Thank you.
We're very glad that you're here, and
Thank you.
bright is good.
Thank you. Second thing is, I've never had an opportunity to meet Ms. Corbin before, but I'm a fan now after listening to her go. That was pretty good. I'm also an automotive repair facility owner. I'm also president of Cal ABC, and our concerns are with automotive shops and what's going to happen with them. A lot of the things have been covered, so I'm going to get right to it. Who owns this data? That's where you got to get to. Who owns this stuff? And if I buy the car, it's my stuff, and I should get a choice as to who gets it, when do they get it, how long do they get it, and what are they going to do with it when they get it? You know, that should be my choice. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to the first panel, but they're talking about choice. You can choose whoever you want to get a car from. Okay, I'll go to the Toyota guy. No, I got to opt in. Okay, then I don't want to do that. Let me go to the Ford guy. Oh, got to opt in. Well, I don't want to do that. Let me go to the Chevy guy. Oh, got to opt in. So sure, I can choose which one I want to go for, but in the end, I'm in the boat. No matter which one I get to choose from, but okay, I guess it was my choice, okay? The other one is that Mrs. Smith is driving down the street. As she drives down the street, she hears, ding, your right back tail light is out, and there's a Chevy dealership 1.5 miles away, and they have an opening today at 10:30. Do you want me to set up your appointment? She, well, okay. But like we just heard, 80% of the work's being done by the automotive shops. Mrs. Smith is my customer. Mrs. Smith ought to be able to say, I want Bud to be able to tell me that, and I want to be able to go to his shop. But if it's a restricted market down and she doesn't get to choose and I don't get to play, the playing field is not level. So I would encourage the committee to at least think about that in terms of having a level playing field. The other one that I thought was interesting was the one about marketing. And I just touched on it here a second ago, but I could see my wife getting in her car, and as she's driving down the freeway, she might like to go to Target, you know, the Target stores. We've got towels on sale at Target, you know, we got this going on at Target. And all these things are going to start happening, and we're just at the beginning of that. You know, in my car, I'd probably be driving down and my car would be talking to me saying, you know, bud, you've already had 2 double cheeseburgers this week and 1's your limit, so you can't go there anymore this week. You know, so as these cars get smarter, we got to figure out what role is going to play both in terms of government, privacy, security with viruses and that kind of thing, and how this is all going to play out. The fact that we're doing this today and just starting the conversation as to how this is going to play out, I'm super encouraged by the questions I hear from the committee in terms of what it is you want to drill down into. Spot on. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Mr. Ayers, welcome from God's country to Sacramento.
You bet. Again, my name's Robert Ayers. I'm here today representing the Independent Automotive Professionals Association of California. Just a little background on me. I've got a lot of ASE certifications, a master technician, a master advanced level, including diesel, hybrid, and gas. I'm a licensed and bonded LSID technician with NASTF. I'm going to talk about that in a sec. And my wife, Nikki, and I own Ayers Automotive Repairs for over 38 years, currently with 2 locations in Santa Barbara. So I feel we know what's going on in the industry. I've been president of our association as well as president of the Automotive Service Councils of California and served on a lot of local, state, and national boards and committees. I agree with what everybody's been saying about security. I've studied Senator Markey's report on tracking and hacking. I understand there's a lot of concerns associated with telematics and the connected vehicle. I really agree that securing the consumer's safety, security, and privacy is very important. You know, as vehicles become more complex and more connected, not only to the infrastructure, but also to vehicle, it's going to be critical that independent repair shops have access to the same information and data as the dealerships to be able to properly service and repair our clients' vehicles, which is about 80% of the cars on the road. And denial of access to this data, information, and connectivity is going to create a very unfair business advantage for the dealerships. A real major area of concern is the ability of anyone to plug in any device they want to. It could be a tuner chip that increases power and violates California emission regulations, a GPS tracking device, a good driver validation to lower your insurance rates, as well as a multitude of other devices. There really should be some standards of who can plug in and what can be plugged in. The ability to plug in anything can put the vehicle system at risk of being compromised or taken over, as we've heard, or having viruses inadvertently being introduced into the system, which causes great risks of malware and ransomware. This could be modeled after the NASTF LSID secure data release model, which is for security professionals to access security information on cars. This is already in place. And the shop or the technician has to be licensed and registered to be eligible to access the security data, and they could be licensed to access the telematics data. This will ensure qualified personnel have access to the data. And this should be followed by all shops, including dealerships. There should be regulations on that. You know, at an Apex show in Las Vegas, Delco demonstrated the Future Auto Service Repair Center. And in it, a client's vehicle could communicate directly to the shop of their choice, alert that shop if the malfunction indicator light comes on. The technician can receive the trouble code and the data, analyze it, order the part. The part could be sitting there, the customer pulls in, and they're back on the road really quickly. A minimum of inconvenience. And this is just the tip of the iceberg on what's coming. I really believe that the automotive aftermarket repair industry will support whatever the manufacturers are going to have to do to prevent vehicles of being hacked, controlled remotely, or being electronically compromised in any manner, now and into the future. However, we can't accept any decision or legislation that's going to interfere with our businesses and the countless jobs and families the automotive aftermarket industry supports. And that's, again, 80% of people that work on cars, their families and everything. And we can't agree with anything that would eliminate the consumer's choice on where they get their cars serviced. So we do look forward to working with all the stakeholders on finding a viable and long-term solution to the complex issue. I really want to thank you for holding this hearing and having me here. Feel free to contact me with any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a suggested approach? You've mentioned that
Well,
we
I
can't do X, but what would you propose so that we can protect your industry as well?
I brought some handouts from how the NASTF model works for like keys and security, and I'll leave them on the table for you guys. I brought about 15 copies, and it's a good role model for how this could be modeled. And if NASTF is willing to consider it, they could probably be the body that will, oversee this, because they've already got everything in place for what they do. Because not anybody can get like a key security code or reset the security system on a car. You have to be registered, licensed, and bonded to do that, and it's quite a process to become that. There's not a lot of them around. I think there's only besides us, there's maybe 1 or 2 others in Santa Barbara, and there's not a lot of them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Ayers. Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm here on behalf of the Auto Care Association. I'm also speaking on behalf of the California Automotive Wholesalers Association, which is our local partner, and the Coalition for Auto Repair Quality. My testimony, I think, has been handed out by our consultant in Sacramento, Gary Conover, and if anybody needs it, I can provide it. I really appreciate you holding this hearing, and especially talking about the impact of telematics systems on the automotive aftermarket. As we've heard from some of the previous witnesses, up to 80%, we think it's more closer to 75% of motorists, after the warranty is expired, go to independent service facilities. They do it because of price, convenience, and most of all, trust. Telematics has the opportunity to change the dynamics on cars. While the advent of telematics and late model has potential to provide significant benefits to consumers regarding how their vehicle is serviced, it also has potential to unnecessarily distort the market, providing extensive control to the manufacturer on how and where car owners obtain repairs, ultimately disrupting the current competitive landscape for vehicle repair to the detriment of small business and consumers. From our perspective, telematics has the ability to send extensive information regarding the health of the vehicle system, including an odometer reading in real time, information can send from messages to the motorist telling them when they need repairs, that a code's been set, and that their car needs to be checked by the technician. They can use that system to make the appointment with the car owner, and from the back end, they have all the information and data on what's wrong with that car, so the tools and information are there when that car gets in there. So that provides for efficiency for both the service facility and for the car owner. The problem with all this is that all the benefits go to the dealership and to the vehicle manufacturer and whoever they choose to provide that data. They have full control of the data. And when you look at that, that's a big problem for our industry, because we're now changing the dynamics of how repairs are made. It used to be the car owner made the choice of where that car is repaired. Now the car is telling the motorist where they should get their car repaired. So this may seem positive, but the problem is that it actually is a negative. So I want to talk about, sorry, I want to try to shorten this a little bit because I know a lot of this has already been covered. So the auto care industry is not sitting on the sidelines. Car owners are keeping their cars longer than ever before, and third-party companies are developing innovative telematics solutions that car owners can use on their current unconnected vehicle. However, most aftermarket systems employ the use of a dongle, which is plugged into the vehicle's onboard diagnostic system. You've probably seen these used by insurance companies. But a wide variety of other systems are available to motorists. The problem, of course, is that only one port can support one device, and therefore the car owner has to make a choice. Do they want the insurance company to have access to that port, or do they want their independent service technician to have access to that port? But a bigger problem with these dongles is the cybersecurity issue, which you've also heard about. The car manufacturers and the government see the dongles as one of the prime security vulnerabilities for vehicles. When someone gets into the port through the onboard diagnostic system, because the car companies did not put any security on their vehicles, they can go anywhere they want in that vehicle once they've entered that port. And so this is going to be a big problem now, and it could be in the future. In addition, as cars come out with more embedded systems, the aftermarket solutions are going to go away, and car owners will choose to stick with their original equipment system, thus causing more disruptions to our industry. So we think that another big issue is that the OBD port eventually is going to go away. Because of the advent of telematics, there will no longer need to be a port, and because the port's considered a cybersecurity vulnerability, this port will go away, and then what's the independent service industry to do at that point? What's the California Resources Board and the smog check program going to do at this point? So we think from a long term, there are two basic things that need to happen. One, there needs to be transparency and control provided to the consumer regarding the data that is being sent by the car. While we applaud the decision by the manufacturers to institute a system whereby the car owners opt in to permitting the manufacturer to share personal data they collect with third parties, this solution in itself is not sufficient. Under the current scenario, the car owner really has no control on which third parties the manufacturer sends the data. We assert that the manufacturers must fully disclose what information is being collected by their vehicle and then provide full control to the motorist as to where that data is sent. After all, the car owner purchased the vehicle. They should own the data produced by that vehicle, thus giving them the ability to direct the data wherever they so choose. Two, the car companies must work with third parties to develop a system which permits data from embedded systems to be shared with responsible entities with the consent of the car owner. An important element in developing a solution for sharing data with third parties must be the protection of the vehicle systems from hacking. We believe there are ways to do this using a gateway system that allows the manufacturer to secure critical safety data while permitting other data to be shared. The manufacturers will need to provide secure access to their systems for vehicle-to-vehicle communications, and when they go to over-the-air reprogramming, which is coming, and if the OBD2 port goes away, the manufacturers will need to provide for emissions testing to be performed. So we think this gateway is a solution that provides both for the protection of the system from hacking, but also provides access to our industry to the information and gives the car owner a choice on where that data is sent securely.
Thank you. Can you wrap up?
Yeah, I will. We've set up a aftermarket task force on telematics, and we really want to work with the manufacturers to set up a solution that works both for the motoring public and for our industry, and also for security of the vehicle. We're hopeful that they will work cooperatively with us to make that happen, but if not, we'll have to look at the legislative solution. But I think the best solution for everybody to come together is to work with our task force to try to solve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestions and also the offer about everybody working together. I think certainly that will make it easier to the point that we can find some common ground and go from there. So
Definitely.
Appreciate your testimony. Our last witness, is it pronounced Seek? Seek. Ms. Seek, if you would go ahead on behalf of the Automobile Club of Southern California.